Next, a new Bible by a unique publisher, and to Elizabeth Farnsworth in San Francisco.
In this millennium year, a new Bible was created by the Arion Press in San Francisco. This Bible is unique because this place is unique. It's one of the last shops in the world where all the work on a book is done under one roof. Press director Andrew Hoyam designed and printed the Bible here, and his colleagues cast the type, made the covers, and bound the work by hand. These artisans and their tools have been designated an endangered cultural treasure by the National Trust for Historic Preservation.
Someone referred to me as a condor recently.
You need to be saved. It's an endangered species.
Right.
You're one of the last people probably who knows how to do this.
Yes, and it's very important that we perpetuate the skills just as we save the equipment and carry it on into the future.
You've done this against great obstacles. You could probably be a much wealthier man if you'd done something different. Why have you done this all these years?
The process of printing by letterpress achieves an aesthetic effect that can't be duplicated by other faster, more modern, more efficient methods. When type bites into paper, it creates a three-dimensional effect, and there's something tactile about it as well as aesthetically pleasing when it is done well.
The all-important type for Hoyam's books is made on 100-year-old machines by Louis Mitchell, who is a master at turning molten lead into letters. Then in the printing, each piece of inked type stands upright and actually indents the paper.
The three-dimensional effect that I refer to is really apparent when you get up close to this book.
The book is Moby Dick, which Arion Press published in 1979 with illustrations by the artist Barry Mosher. Some critics consider it one of the 2 or 3 most beautiful books of the 20th century.
You're seeing the type and its impression on both sides of the sheet of paper, and it creates a kind of shadow or halo effect, very much akin to inscriptional lettering in stone.
When you look at it, why is it a fully finished work of art for you?
Well, first I had to establish the text pages, that the line length was correct for this type size, that the line wasn't too long for readability, that the margins of the book were such that you had a slightly elevated feeling when looking at the text block. Having established that basic text page, it was possible then to go on to other embellishments, such as the illustration.
Beginning, did you know you wanted to make your art take this form?
I started out by having a combined interest in literature and visual arts, and enjoyed drawing as well as writing poetry. And those two interests really came to one in the making of books by hand.
The press has published 60 books since it opened in 1974, including a 1988 edition of James Joyce's Ulysses with etchings by the artist Robert Motherwell, Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol with drawings by Ida Applebrug, and Jean Toomer's Cain, a novel of the Harlem Renaissance with woodcuts by the sculptor Martin Puryear.
It's one I like very much. They're printed on Japanese handmade paper, which is different from the paper in the book. It's very thin and translucent, and in fact, in the open areas of the woodblock print, you can actually see some of the text from the page behind.
How much are you selling this for?
This is $750. It's a limited edition of 400 copies.
But the new Bible is the press's largest, most demanding project so far. It weighs 35 pounds, is bound in leather or cloth, and in some editions, the initial letters are illuminated. The translation was sponsored by the National Council of Churches. 400 copies have been printed, and they're selling for $7,000 to $11,000, depending on the binding and whether the letters are illuminated.
The Bible is an extraordinarily complicated and difficult book to produce, so I found myself having to solve a whole array of typographic problems as we went through the book.
Give us an example of how you solved some of those problems.
To me, the most important resolution that had to be made at the outset was as to how to set the basic text page and also what type to choose. And I chose Romulus. It's very readable and open, and yet beautiful without calling too much attention to itself. I wanted a book that would stand up for perhaps hundreds of years, not just as a physical object that was so well made in paper that would resist disintegration, but a look that would be of our time and still would look fresh in the future.
How long did it take you from the time you first decided to do the Bible until right now? When you're just finishing the binding of it, right?
I began in earnest about 10 years ago. Production began, 2 to 3 years ago. It took us 18 months to do the press work.
And I've read that it's physically very difficult. Explain what's physical about it. You're in really good shape because of this, right?
It was 2 pages of type. When we were printing 2 pages at a time on our press, together with the steel frame and the wood furniture that is used to lock the type into place so it can be put into the press, weighs over 100 pounds. So it took 2 of us to lift that into the press, in and out, in and out.
Do you think that this is the last large Bible of this sort to be printed with hot metal type? In other words, is this the end of the Gutenberg era?
I think there's a good probability of that. We were fortunate in having at our disposal all the tools and the people with the skills to make a Bible from lead alloy type, printed by letterpress at this time. And I couldn't be sure that would be the case in the future, so it was sort of now or never.
Varied skills have been involved in creating the Bible, and Arion has some of the most experienced people in the business. Lewis Mitchell has worked in typecasting for more than half a century.
If you notice here the shine,
Yeah.
when you don't see a shine, then you stop and then you get worried because you know something's wrong.
Bookbinder Leif Erlandsson learned his trade in Sweden.
I'm skiving the labels for the cloth edition of the Bible.
What's the word you use, skiving?
Skiving, thinning the edge so that when the label is put onto the book back, it doesn't have a thick bulk.
It's just a little thinner right here.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing this?
It's probably around 40 years.
Peggy Gotthold has been a binder for 17 years.
This actually sews the top of the book together, as well as having all the sewing along the spine. So it's a way of strengthening the whole structure.
Have you found other people you can train to do it?
The process of training takes time. Some people can't stick with it, and that's a problematic thing once they find what's really involved. It's exacting and it's repetitious. That combination is difficult for some people.
The devotion to detail in this place is almost palpable, and the difficulty in finding other people with that devotion is part of what makes Arion endangered. Every process is done with loving care, including proofreading.
As often as I can, I'm the proofreader reading aloud. It gives me a better sense of what we're dealing with. So I read all of Cain aloud.
I asked Hoyam to read a poem from Cain.
The poem is entitled Reapers. Black reapers, with the sound of steel on stones, are sharpening scythes. I see them place the hones in their hip pockets as a thing that's done, and start their silent swinging, one by one. Black horses drive a mower through the weeds, and there a field rat, startled, squealing, bleeds, his belly close to ground. I see the blade, blood-stained, continue cutting weeds and shade.
This old-fashioned place almost failed earlier this year because of skyrocketing rents and threatened eviction. But an outpouring of support from San Franciscans postponed the eviction and will help Arion move to new space in the Presidio next month. Hoyam and his staff are already planning their next projects, but work on the Bible will continue. Only 10 are finished. That leaves 390 still to be done.
The Arion Press Bible is the subject of an exhibition at the Gallery of the American Bible Society Library in New York City through January 5th.